I stayed at my friend's house. And her son said, "You don't have to pretend you don't feel this." The words left his mouth at 2 in the morning, standing in the dim kitchen light, and everything inside me shattered. Because Ethan Walker was 28 years old, built like a Greek statue carved by someone who understood modern aesthetics, and he was looking at me, Claire Brennan, 53, divorced, broken in ways I'd spent years hiding, like I was the only woman who had ever existed. His hand was on the counter inches from mine, and the charge between us could have powered the entire house. But here's the part that made my blood run cold. His mother, my best friend of 22 years, was sleeping one floor above us, and if she ever found out what her son just said to me, I wouldn't just lose a friendship. I would lose the only person left in this world who actually loved me. Let me be very clear about something. I didn't come to Karen Walker's lake house in North Carolina looking for this. I came because 3 weeks earlier, I'd sat in a doctor's office and received news that rearranged my entire understanding of the future. News I hadn't told anyone. News that was eating me alive from the inside like acid. Karen had heard the tremor in my voice during our phone call, and insisted I come stay for 2 weeks. "You need rest," she'd said. "You need your best friend." What she didn't mention was that her son Ethan had moved back home 6 months ago after his own catastrophic life event. A broken engagement that left him hollowed out and questioning everything, and that we'd be sharing the same roof, the same kitchen, the same quiet mornings on the dock. And she certainly didn't mention that her son had become the kind of man who could see straight through people. I need to go back to the beginning because what happened at that lake house didn't start in the kitchen at 2 in the morning. It started the moment I pulled into the gravel driveway and Ethan walked out the front door carrying a towel over his shoulder, fresh from the lake, water still dripping from his dark hair, his fair skin catching the late afternoon sun. He was tall, easily 6'2", with a kind of build that suggested discipline rather than vanity. Broad shoulders, lean waist, arms that looked like they'd spent years rowing or climbing or doing something beautifully physical. His jaw was sharp, his eyes were this impossible shade of green that reminded me of sea glass, and when he smiled at me, it was crooked and knowing and entirely too confident. "So you're the famous Claire," he said, extending a damp hand and then pulling it back with a grin. "Sorry. What? Mom talks about you like you're a combination of Oprah and a guardian angel. And she talks about you like you're the second coming," I replied, stepping out of my car and stretching after the 6-hour drive. "I expected a halo." He laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and rich, and it caught me off guard because it sounded nothing like his mother's. "The halo's in the shop. I've been wearing horns in the meantime. Can I grab your bags?" "I can carry my own bags." "I'm sure you can. But can I carry them anyway? Or are we going to have a feminist standoff in the driveway while my mom watches from the window?" I glanced up. Sure enough, Karen was at the upstairs window waving frantically, already mouthing something I couldn't decipher. I looked back at Ethan. "Fine. But only because your mother is watching, and I don't want her to think I was rude to her precious baby. I'm 28. Like I said. Baby." That crooked grin again. Something flickered in his green eyes, surprise maybe or appreciation. He grabbed my 2 suitcases like they weighed nothing and walked ahead of me into the house, and I absolutely did not watch the way his back muscles moved under his t-shirt. I absolutely did not. Karen nearly tackled me at the top of the stairs. She was 61, silver-haired, perpetually energized, the kind of woman who organized charity runs and baked casseroles for neighbors and never sat still. She'd been my anchor since we met at a publishing conference in our 30s, back when I was still married to David and she was still married to Tom, and the world felt like it had infinite room for our dreams. Tom died of a heart attack 7 years ago. David didn't die, he just left, which in some ways was worse because at least Karen got to keep the memory of being loved. "You look thin," Karen said, pulling back and studying my face with her mother hen intensity. "Have you been eating?" "I eat." "You look tired." "I drove 6 hours." "You look." She stopped. Her eyes narrowed. Karen Walker had a gift for reading faces the way scholars read ancient texts, with patience, precision, and an unsettling ability to find what was hidden. "We're going to talk later," she said quietly. "We're going to drink wine later," I corrected. "That's different." The first 3 days were exactly what I needed. Karen and I fell into our old rhythm. Morning coffee on the dock, long walks through the woods, afternoons reading on the porch while the lake shimmered. We talked about everything and nothing. But we didn't talk about the thing she sensed was wrong because I deflected every time she got close, and Karen was wise enough to give me space. Ethan was a constant, quiet presence. He cooked elaborate breakfasts every morning. He made repairs around the house, chopped wood, went for long runs. He was polite but not distant, funny but not performative. And he had this habit of saying exactly the thing that cut through pretense. On the third evening, Karen went to bed early with a headache, and Ethan and I ended up on the dock with a bottle of wine. "So what's really going on with you, Claire?" he asked, no preamble. "What do you mean? You smile constantly, you deflect every personal question, and you stare at the lake like it has answers. Those are 3 hallmarks of someone in crisis who's decided to handle it alone." I stared at him. That's a very specific observation from someone I've known for 3 days. I'm observant. It's my worst quality. Well, second worst. My actual worst quality is that I can't stop once I start seeing things. "And what do you see?" He turned to look at me. The dock lights caught his face, and for a moment, he looked much older than 28. "I see someone who's carrying something heavy and pretending it's light." My throat tightened. I took a long sip of wine. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe. He didn't push. Instead, he leaned back on his hands and looked at the stars. When Jess left me, I did the same thing. Showed up here, smiled for Mom, pretended I was fine. Took about 3 weeks before I cracked. What happened? I was chopping wood and I just stopped. Stood there holding the axe and cried for 20 minutes. Mom found me. Didn't say a word. Just stood next to me until I was done. He paused. Sometimes the people who love us don't need us to explain. They just need us to stop pretending. If you're already feeling the weight of this story, if Claire's secret is burning a hole in your curiosity, hit that like button and stay with me, because what happens next changed everything. The week progressed and something began to shift between Ethan and me, something I noticed with growing alarm. Our conversations got longer. Our silences got more comfortable. He started finding reasons to be wherever I was, and I started finding reasons to let him. "You're frowning at that manuscript like it insulted your mother," he said one afternoon, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. It did. This author used literally 14 times on one page. Literally 14 times? I threw a pencil at him. He caught it without looking up from his book, and the grin he gave me was devastatingly charming. Something warm and dangerous bloomed in my chest. "Stop that," I said. "Stop what?" "Being whatever this is. Literate? Charming? Devastatingly handsome and natural light? All of the above. It's annoying. You're blushing, Claire." "I am not blushing. I'm 53. I don't blush. I have hot flashes." He laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. And I found myself laughing too, and it felt like the first real laugh I'd had in months. On day 6, something happened that I still replay in my mind like a scene from a film I can't stop watching. It was late afternoon. Karen had driven into town for groceries. I was in the kitchen washing dishes when the faucet handle snapped off in my hand, sending a jet of cold water straight into my face and chest. I shrieked. Ethan came running from the living room, assessed the situation in half a second, reached past me and grabbed the pipe beneath the sink to cut the water. The problem was the angle. To reach the shutoff valve, he had to press against me. His chest against my back, his arm reaching around me, his face inches from my neck. The water stopped. The kitchen went silent except for the dripping and our breathing. Neither of us moved. I was soaked. My white cotton shirt was clinging to every curve of my body, translucent in places I couldn't ignore. Water dripped from my silver-streaked hair down my neck, and I could feel his breath there, warm, unsteady, close enough to make every nerve ending in my body ignite. "The water's off," I whispered. "I know." His voice was low, rough, barely controlled. "You can let go now." "I know." But he didn't let go. His hand moved from the pipe to the counter on either side of me, caging me gently. I could feel the heat of his body through my soaked shirt, Could feel the hard planes of his chest against my shoulder blades. Could feel something electric and undeniable pulsing between us like a second heartbeat. His lips brushed my ear. Not a kiss, just a brush, feather-light, possibly accidental, probably not. My eyes closed. My hands gripped the edge of the counter. Every rational thought I'd ever had, about age, about propriety, about his mother, about everything, dissolved like sugar in hot water. His hand left the counter and found my waist. His fingers pressed into the wet fabric, tracing the curve there with a touch so gentle and deliberate that it felt like he was memorizing me. My breath caught. I tilted my head slightly, exposing my neck, and I felt him lean closer, his lips hovering over the place where my pulse was hammering visibly beneath my skin. Claire. His voice was wrecked, a whisper wrapped in gravel. We can't, I breathed. But my body was saying something completely different. My back was arching slightly into him. My hand had found his forearm and my fingers were gripping the muscle there. Tell me to stop. His lips moved against my neck as he spoke. Still not kissing, just hovering, torturing us both with the almost. Stop, I said. It was the weakest, least convincing word I'd ever spoken. He exhaled. A long, shuddering breath that I felt travel down my entire spine. Then, slowly, with visible effort, he stepped back. The cold air rushed into the space where his body had been, and I felt its absence like a physical wound. I turned around. We stared at each other. He was breathing hard, his green eyes dark and dilated, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle working beneath his fair skin. I was dripping wet, trembling, flushed in ways that had nothing to do with temperature. I'm going to go chop wood, he said. Good idea. A lot of wood. Great. He turned and walked out the back door, and I stood in the flooded kitchen with my hand over my racing heart, and I thought, I am in catastrophic trouble. Karen came home an hour later to find the kitchen mopped, the faucet repaired, and her son outside splitting logs with a kind of intensity that suggested he was trying to chop his way to the center of the earth. She looked at me, looked at him, looked at me again. What happened? Faucet broke. Must have been quite a faucet. On day 7 the other crack appeared. I was in the bathroom when dizziness hit, sudden, violent, blinding. I grabbed the counter and waited for it to pass. When I opened my eyes, my reflection stared back at me. Fair skin gone pale, silver-streaked hair looking limp, my body seeming diminished somehow. The door was slightly open. Ethan was walking past. He stopped. Claire. I'm fine. You're gripping the counter like it's a life raft. He didn't push further. But that night I found a glass of water and 2 aspirin on my nightstand with a note. You don't have to be fine. But drink water anyway. I held that note and cried silently for 10 minutes. The thing I was hiding was this. 6 weeks before arriving at the lake house I'd found a lump. 2 weeks of tests later, my doctor told me I had stage 2 breast cancer. Treatable. Survivable. But requiring aggressive treatment starting in 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks of freedom before my life became a series of hospital visits and chemical warfare on my own body. I hadn't told anyone. Because telling people made it real, and if it was real then I had to feel it, and if I felt it I would fall apart, and I'd been falling apart for so long already, through the divorce, through the loneliness, that I wasn't sure there were enough pieces left to shatter. But I didn't expect Ethan. Day 9 changed everything. Karen left for a 2-day trip to visit her sister in Charlotte, and suddenly Ethan and I were alone, and the air between us became something thick and electric and impossible to ignore. He made dinner that night. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, candles on the back porch overlooking the lake. This feels suspiciously like a date, I said. It's dinner. Dinner with candles. The power might go out. I'm being practical. The power is clearly on. The porch lights are glowing behind you. Ambience, Claire. It's called ambience. It's called trouble. After dinner we talked about wounds and wonder. He told me about his architecture dreams. I told him about the novel I'd always wanted to write. Write it, he said. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You sit down. You write words. Every cathedral starts with 1 line on paper. Your novel starts with 1 sentence. I looked at him. Moonlight was silver on the water. When did you get so wise? About 30 seconds after my fiancé told me I was too much and walked out. Pain makes you wise or bitter. I chose wise because bitter requires too much energy. That was the moment I felt myself falling. Genuinely falling, like stepping off a cliff and discovering you don't mind the drop because the view is extraordinary. Now what happened next is the moment everything nearly fell apart. And if you're invested in Claire and Ethan's story, I need you to subscribe right now, because you will not want to miss what comes next. Day 10. 2 in the morning. The moment from the beginning. I couldn't sleep. The dizziness had returned, worse, accompanied by bone-deep nausea. I crept downstairs and found Ethan already there, shirtless, leaning against the counter, staring at his phone with a haunted expression, reading old messages from someone who no longer loved him. He looked up. Can't sleep either? No. I got water and turned to leave, but dizziness hit and I stumbled. Suddenly his hands were on my arms, steadying me, and he was close, impossibly dangerously close, warmth radiating off his bare skin. Claire. What's wrong with you? Don't say nothing. Something is wrong and you've been hiding it since you got here and I can't. He stopped. I can't watch you suffer in silence. Why do you care? I'm your mother's friend. A guest. He stared at me, hands still on my arms. Kitchen quiet except for the refrigerator and distant crickets. You know why, he said. Don't. You don't have to pretend you don't feel this. 9 words that detonated everything. Tears burned behind my eyes. I'm 53 years old, I whispered. Your mother's best friend. I know. This is insane. I know. My voice broke. The secret rose to the surface before I could stop it. I'm sick, Ethan. I'm sick and I'm scared and I didn't come here for this. I came to have 3 normal weeks before my life becomes a nightmare. What do you mean you're sick? I told him everything. The lump. The diagnosis. The treatment starting in 12 days. Standing in his mother's kitchen at 2 in the morning, silver-streaked hair loose around my shoulders, I gave him the truth I'd been carrying alone. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, his eyes were wet, and his hands moved to my face, cradling it, thumbs brushing away tears. You're not doing this alone, he said. You don't get to decide that. Watch me. Then he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against mine. And we stood like that, breathing each other's air, trembling on the edge of something enormous. I'm too old for you, I murmured. You're too stubborn for me. Age has nothing to do with it. Tell me you don't feel it and I'll walk away, he said. Right now. Say the words. I couldn't. They would have been the biggest lie I'd ever told, and I was so tired of lying. I feel it, I whispered. I feel everything. We sat at the kitchen table until dawn talking about everything. His fears, my fears, our shared fear that what we felt was too big and too complicated. When first light hit the windows, he made coffee and said, 12 days. I'm going to make every single one count. The next day, he took me to a waterfall he'd discovered as a teenager. We stood in the mist and I told him about the novel I wanted to write. A love story about 2 people who find each other at the wrong time. Write it about us, he said. It wouldn't be believable. The best stories never are. Sitting on a rock beside the waterfall, he kissed me for the first time. Gentle, deliberate, tasting like mountain water and possibility. When he pulled back, he was smiling and I was crying. For the record, this is the best wrong decision I've ever made, he said. You're impossible. You're magnificent. I'm crying and my hair is frizzy from the humidity. Magnificent. That night, the second night alone in the lake house, everything that had been building between us finally became something neither of us had the strength or the desire to stop. We were on the couch after dinner, talking softly, a blanket across our laps, the fire crackling. He was telling me about a building in Barcelona that had changed his understanding of beauty, and I was watching his mouth move and not hearing a single word. He noticed. You're not listening, he said. I'm listening to different things. What things? Your heartbeat. I can hear it from here. He went still. Then he reached over and took my hand and placed it flat against his chest. Beneath my palm, his heart was hammering. Fast, urgent, betraying every ounce of calm his voice pretended to carry. That's what you do to me, he said quietly. Every time you walk into a room, every time you laugh, every time you look at me with those eyes like you're trying to talk yourself out of something your whole body is saying yes to. Ethan. I know all the reasons we shouldn't. He lifted my hand from his chest and pressed his lips to my palm, slowly, deliberately, his eyes never leaving mine. I know the age. I know my mother. I know you're scared. But I need you to hear me when I say that none of those reasons are louder than what I feel when I'm near you. The fire popped. Shadows danced across his face. I looked at this man, this beautiful, impossible, too young man who saw me more clearly than anyone ever had. And I made a choice. Not a reckless choice. Not a blind one. A deliberate, eyes wide open choice to stop denying myself the thing my entire soul was reaching for. I leaned forward and kissed him. Not like the waterfall, not gentle, not tentative. This kiss was honest. This kiss was hunger and surrender and 20 years of loneliness breaking open like a dam. He responded instantly, his hands finding my waist, pulling me closer. And the blanket fell away and the world fell away and there was only heat and breath and the desperate, sacred urgency of two people who had waited too long to stop waiting. He pulled me onto his lap and I went willingly, my knees on either side of his hips, my fingers threading through his hair. His hands traced the curve of my waist, my hips, the arch of my back, mapping me with the same reverence he described giving to his blueprints, but this was different. This was alive. This was skin against skin as layers disappeared slowly at first, then less slowly. His mouth found my collarbone, and the sound I made was something between a prayer and a confession. Are you sure? He whispered against my skin. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. He stood, lifting me with him like I weighed nothing, and carried me through the firelit living room and up the stairs. The hallway was dark. His room was silver with moonlight streaming through the window, the lake visible beyond, still and luminous as a mirror. He laid me down on his bed like I was something precious and breakable, and I pulled him down to me because I was tired of being treated like I might shatter. I wanted to feel alive. I wanted to feel wanted. I wanted to feel, period, after years of numbness, after months of medical terror, after a lifetime of performing strength I didn't always possess. What followed was not rushed. It was not frantic. It was slow and deliberate and devastating in its tenderness. He explored every inch of me with a patience that made me feel like I had been worth waiting for. Worth the complications, worth the impossible math of our ages, worth the risk. His hands trembled, and that trembling undid me more than confidence ever could, because it meant this mattered. I mattered. When we finally came together, I gasped and he held still, his forehead pressed against mine, our gesture our shorthand, and we breathed together until the overwhelm became something manageable, something rhythmic, something that built and built like music climbing toward a crescendo that had been written into us long before we met. Afterward, we lay tangled together in the moonlight, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. His heartbeat was steady now. Mine was still catching up. For a woman who said, "We can't in the kitchen last week," he murmured. "You have a very flexible definition of can't." "Shut up. Make me." I lifted my head and kissed him, and he smiled against my mouth and I thought, this is what it feels like to be held by someone who isn't afraid of all of you. Not just the beautiful parts. Not just the easy parts. All of you. "I'm going to write about this," I said. "The lovemaking. The feeling. The feeling of finally being seen. If you describe my body in your novel, I want approval rights. You'll be fictionalized." Fictionalized how? Taller? More rugged? Even more impossibly attractive? Shorter? Balding? Beer belly? You wound me. You'll survive. He kissed my forehead. "Yeah," he said softly. "We both will." And in that quiet promise in that moonlit room I believed him. Karen came back the next day, and the world snapped back into sharp, uncomfortable focus. Ethan and I became careful, not cold but cautious. No lingering looks at the dinner table. No accidental touches in the hallway. We existed with the careful choreography of two people hiding a shared earthquake. But Karen wasn't stupid. Karen was the furthest thing from stupid. On day 13, she found me on the dock at sunrise and sat down with 2 cups of coffee and the expression of a woman who had already figured out the answers. "How long are you going to hide it?" she asked. My blood froze. "Hide what?" "Whatever's going on between you and my son." "Karen, I'm not blind, Claire. The way he looks at you. The way you look away. The way neither of you can be in the same room without the air changing." She sipped her coffee. "I'm his mother. I notice. Nothing has. Something has happened. The question is whether you're going to be honest with me, or let it destroy our friendship." This was the moment I dreaded. I set down my coffee and told her the truth. Not just about Ethan. About everything. The diagnosis. The cancer. The treatment. The terror. The feelings I developed for her son that I'd tried to fight and failed. Karen's face went through shock, fear, hurt, anger, and finally something I hadn't expected. Understanding. "You have cancer," she said flatly. "And you didn't tell me." "I couldn't." "You couldn't tell your best friend?" "I didn't want to be your burden." "You have never been my burden." Her voice cracked. "You have been my anchor for 22 years and you thought you were a burden?" "And my son," she continued. "My son is falling in love with you and you're falling in love with him and you have cancer and nobody thought to include me? I was trying to protect you. I don't want to be protected. I want to be present." She grabbed my hands. "You are going to fight this. You are going to let me be there. And as for Ethan, he is a grown man who has always known his own heart. If his heart has chosen you, then I trust his heart, because I raised it." I broke down completely. 22 years of friendship, and she still found ways to shatter me with her grace. If this story is hitting you in places you didn't expect, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment. Have you ever hidden something from the people who loved you most because you thought you were protecting them? The remaining days became something I'll carry forever. Karen shifted from friend to fierce guardian, researching treatments, calling her oncologist cousin, organizing an actual binder of resources. Ethan stopped hiding. He held my hand at breakfast. He read architecture books aloud because beautiful design was medicine for the spirit. One evening, 3 days before I left for treatment, we stood on the dock at sunset. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. "What if the treatment doesn't work?" I whispered. "Then we deal with that. What if I lose my hair? Then I'll shave mine." Solidarity. He turned me around. "I didn't fall in love with your health. I fell in love with you. The stubborn, brilliant, sarcastic, terrified, magnificent you. Your mother is watching from the window again. Let her watch. I want witnesses." He kissed me, deep and slow, and Karen later told me she cried watching from the window, and everything about this was messy and unconventional and I didn't care. I was done caring about appearances. I only cared about what things felt like. I left on a Tuesday morning. Karen held me for 3 minutes. Ethan leaned into my car window, pressed his forehead against mine. "I'll be there for the first treatment," he said. "You don't have to." "I want to. There's a difference and you need to learn it." The treatment was brutal. Everything I feared and worse. But Ethan drove 3 hours each way for every session. When I lost my hair in week 4, he showed up with a shaved head. "You didn't," I said. Solidarity. "Also, I have a surprisingly good skull shape." "You're ridiculous." "You love it." "I love you." First time I'd said it outright. He went very still. Cupped my bare head. Kissed me softly. "Say it again." "I love you." "Again." "I love you, you impossible, too young, too beautiful man." "I love you too." The too old part is negotiable, the too stubborn part is permanent, and the too beautiful part is objective fact. Karen came for week 6. Slept on my couch, cooked meals, argued with my insurance company so ferociously that several representatives are probably still in therapy. One night, while Ethan slept on the armchair, Karen looked at him, then at me. When Tom died, I thought I'd never see that look again. Someone who's found their person. Then I saw it on my son's face, looking at you, and I thought God has a strange sense of humor. Are you really okay with this? She was quiet. I was scared at first. Not the age difference. I was afraid of losing you both, you to cancer and him to heartbreak. But watching you these weeks, I'm not scared anymore. I'm proud. Treatment lasted 5 months. Results were very encouraging. The road ahead remained long and uncertain, but it was a road, not a cliff. Ethan moved closer, not in with me, not yet. We honored the pace that fit us. He rented an apartment 20 minutes away, started at a local architecture firm, came to every appointment, brought flowers he said were structurally superior to grocery store arrangements, and designed a desk where I could write, because I was writing the novel. Our story transformed and fictionalized, but ours at its core. The first sentence was, she arrived at the lake house carrying 2 suitcases and a secret, and both were heavier than they looked. Ethan read chapter 1. It's perfect. But you made the guy too handsome. I toned it down. Impossible. You can't tone down perfection. Documented by whom? By you. Chapter 1, paragraph 3. He had the kind of face that made sensible women forget their own phone numbers. Fiction, Ethan. Aha. 1 year later. My scans are clean. My novel is with a publisher. Karen's support group has 62 members. Ethan's community center won a regional architecture award. And last month, on the anniversary of that night in the kitchen, he took me back to the lake house. 2 in the morning. The doc. You still don't have to pretend, he said. I'm not pretending anything. Good. Then you won't pretend to be surprised when I ask you to marry me. He pulled out a ring-thin gold band single stone. He'd designed it himself. If you say I'm too young, you are too young. If you say your mother won't approve, your mother already helped him pick the stone, Karen called from the kitchen window. I laughed. I cried. I said yes. Because here's the truth that cancer and love and a 28-year-old man with green eyes taught me. You don't have to pretend you don't feel this. Whatever this is, love, fear, hope, longing, you don't have to pretend. The pretending is what kills you. The feeling is what saves you. If you're carrying something heavy and pretending it's light, put it down. Let someone help. Let someone see you. Love doesn't follow rules. It follows hearts. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe. Every like helps more people find stories like this. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to stop pretending. And tell me in the comments, have you ever found love where you least expected it? I read every single one. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for feeling this with me. Now stop pretending. Start living.